Hello fans, this is the Kevin Piland Show. Now today's episode is about a story I heard last night about how a woman was fired because of her handwriting. But I think that the person who fired her may not have been thinking twice before he or she did it. So I want you to understand this. Now, if I was working there as a waiter, because she was a waitress at that time over at the Dixie Pig on South 14th and Veteran here in Abilene, Texas. Now, I want you to think about this. If you were a waiter and you did exactly what you were supposed to do and then they turned around and said, no, you need to learn how to write bigger, how would you feel about that? Would you ever want to work for them again? I wouldn't. I'd be pissed off, because that's like them telling me, oh, you gotta learn how to write like a third grader. But you're not a third grader, you're an adult. Because most adults don't want to see those big words. Now, when I was watching the story, I was able to read her handwriting just fine. And it was big enough. And that's why I'm not buying the reason why she was fired. I'm not saying I'm not buying her story. What I am saying is I'm not buying what happened to her. Because that should never have happened. And to talk about at-will employment and for them to say, oh, they have a right to fire people for no reason even if it's unfair. I don't want to hear that on the news. 'Cause all this does is make the restaurants look bad. And I can't have that going on. So the last thing I want to do is go out to eat and then when I talk about something on the news I get kicked out. I'm not going for that again. Bad enough a friend of mine was fired at a bus station over what was supposed to be a safety story on KRBC. You know? I understand it was against the policy for them to be on the news about the subject, but I wish they could have told her that even before this. She does have a right to free speech. She really does. So for them to tell her it's against their policy, that's not right. Sure, there are some things you're not supposed to say on the news, but you gotta understand this. She may have had the right to do it, but she was not doing it against CityLink or its employees. She wasn't doing it against them at all. She was doing it against those drivers who just don't want to pay attention to where they're going and crashing into buses. You know, there's just no need for this. You know, sometimes people drink and drive and they need advice from somebody that's experienced it, and so they want to be able to actually do it on the air. And for CityLink to go against her like that, I'm not going for that again. One time I was talking with a friend of mine at the bus station, and one guy made a big deal about it and tried to threaten me and put me in jail for a crime I didn't commit. I had to get out of the building because I didn't want any problems. Luckily, the CityLink staff stepped in and diffused the situation while I rocked outside because I didn't want to get hurt. And the friend that I was talking to eventually came out and she told me that the guy had been doing this for a while and he was just having a bad day. And get this, it was on my birthday, as a matter of fact. That was back in 2009. You know, oh wait, it was in 2010. There we go. It was in 2010. It was on my birthday in 2010 that the incident took place. I was just minding my own business and talking to her about a story I heard on TV, and come to find out the guy was just being an ass. And then to find out that he himself got arrested for making the bus drivers look bad. So I was wondering what the deal was with that. And I didn't want to be on TV if they were to do a story on me. And, you know, I wasn't going to let that happen. And I didn't want to get hurt because I had a job to do that day. And no, this had nothing to do with the Kevin Piland Show. I was working at Subway at that time. You know, I was picking up a shift at North First. But before I went there, I was going to go eat before I came. And this bull crap I had to put up with. You know, I had to deal with that idiot. I didn't even know he was talking to me until after the fact, you know. But I decided that I didn't want to fight with him. I said, "Excuse me, you don't talk to me like that. You know, I have a right to talk to my friends, and if you're gonna act like that, you might as well not even be here." But I wasn't gonna talk to him like that. But you know, I have to get out of the room before the fight escalates. That way, I don't get in trouble for something that had nothing to do with me originally. And there was a rumor going around that I got suspended for telling June to do this, but as it turns out, I had nothing to do with it. It's just some knucklehead was spreading rumors about me just to get me kicked out of the buses, and I wasn't going to have that. You know, I don't deserve to be treated like that, first of all, because, you know, I had a job to do at the time that required a van route back then, but now I don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. So, and then they changed the price to $2 without telling me first. I wish they would have warned me about it firsthand. How am I supposed to know about that stuff? You know, I need to know beforehand. Don't just tell me after the fact. You know? Because that's like them telling me that what I need to know is none of my business, and I can't accept that. Now that I got that out of the way, I want to show you a story that bothered me the most. This story was about two guys that were charged with selling homes that they did not own. And get this, one guy came home that was in the hospital and he finds that someone else is living in his house, and that's unacceptable. Here's the report from CBS 4 Denver.
That involved an Aurora man who had been away and came home to find people living in his house. Now the Denver District Attorney's Office had filed charges involving homes in this city. Alfonso Carrillo's business is one that involves real estate. It's the paperwork that's being called into question. For instance, a man agreed to buy this house in southwest Denver for $80,000. He put another $8,000 of improvements into it, then found out someone else really owned it.
Hi, Mr. Carrillo. Rick Salinger from Channel 4. Can we talk to you about your business?
He did not reply as he entered court on charges of forgery and theft.
These charges are alleging that he was scamming potential home buyers by accepting money that they thought were down payments or rental payments for a home that he did not actually own or have control of.
That includes this part of a duplex on West Nevada Place. Someone thought they bought it, only to be forcibly evicted a few months later by the real owner. There's more.
At your house?
Yeah.
As you maintain. All right, well, let's see what happens you try to claim your house back.
Larry Asbury left his Aurora home to go into the hospital earlier this year. When he got out, he found others living in his house.
Oh!
What the man staying there told us led us to Alfonso Carrillo. His company is called America's Home Retention Services. But when we arrived a couple weeks ago, Carrillo had missed our appointment. We caught up with him today.
Well, you said you would meet with us the other day, and then you didn't show up. Why was that?
The other party retained an attorney, and my attorney told me not to come in anymore, so there's no coming.
Rudy Breda is also charged in the alleged scam. He is at large. And prosecutors are wondering if there could be more of Carrillo's clients who they haven't heard from yet. The DA's office says the alleged scheme targeted Spanish-speaking home buyers. Many of them were undocumented and therefore afraid to come forward and speak with law enforcement officers.
And I'd like to thank Rick Salinger for that report about those two guys. Now, the good news is one of them was out of jail on a $10,000 bond, as you may have heard, but the other is still in jail. And speaking of that, I want you to know that if I ever found out about something like that going on in my place of residence, I'd be pissed too. Because that's like them telling me that it's not my house when it actually is. Because, see, that's the term called stolen home. So if you saw the words stolen house or stolen home on the left-hand corner of your screen, that's what I'm talking about. You know, can you imagine moving in to a house that's supposed to be yours only to find out it belongs to someone else. Can you imagine that taking place? I wouldn't. I'd be pissed off if I found out that I moved to someone else's house without being aware of it. And then I get in trouble for not being aware that I stole someone's house until later. I can't have that going on either. So, anyway, there are 2 other stories that I want to tell you about today. If I can remember what they are, just a second. Oh yeah. I just now remembered. Sometimes it takes a while because I tend to forget what's going on. Anyway, now this story is so confusing that people are feeling differently about the daycare whose services were being taken care of by a sex offender. But get this guy was not having to do with children or anything like that. But yet, what he's accused of is stealing pictures from the daycares. And for him to work for a contracted business, you know, from what I understand, apparently the daycare was not required to do the background checks, except for to its employees, but yet the contracting company should have done their own background checks. But the good news is, this incident you're about to see has nothing to do with him committing a sex crime. However, he has had an arrest back in 1999 for a sex-related crime. This story is also from CBS4Denver.com.
Ken Kidner apparently does have a criminal history. Back in 1999, in fact, he was convicted of a sex assault with a 14-year-old victim out of Aurora. Now, that is the case that actually landed him on the state sex offender registry. And now Denver police have issued an arrest warrant for him involving a theft case that involves this daycare. But we've also learned, because he was not actually an employee of this daycare, but rather a contract employee with a cleaning services company, it didn't require this daycare to do a background check on him. Police are looking for 37-year-old Kenneth Kinder. The registered sex offender is accused of stealing cameras, memory cards, and cash from 2 daycares, the Children's Learning Center in Denver and the Children's Garden Learning Center in Broomfield.
There are photographs of children and families on those memory cards.
Broomfield police say that Kinder worked as a contract janitor at both daycares. The ownerships did not want to comment on the theft case or that a registered sex offender was working in their schools. But management from one of the daycares says they had been using JanPro cleaning services to hire their janitors who worked after hours. JanPro is a nationwide company. They say the local franchise owners are responsible for doing their own background checks on anyone they hire. Denver police say they searched Kinder's Aurora home and found some of the stolen items.
And those items we're looking at now, reviewing, as well as having sent a computer that was owned by Mr. Kinder in to have it looked at. There should have been a very thorough background check that should have been done on Mr. Kinder. And based on the information that came from that background information, that should have determined whether or not he should have been there.
And Denver police tell us that they do not think that this theft case is in any way, shape, or form connected to, or had a sexual motivation, I should say. Now, the Colorado Department of Human Services tells us that state law requires the daycare centers to do background checks on its employees, but not for contractors who do not actually have contact with the children. We also put a call into that franchise local cleaning company to see if they did any kind of a background check on Kinder, and they did not return our phone calls.
And I'd like to thank Jennifer Bryce for that reporting. This show has had its days where people will get confused about absolutely anything as far as what the story is really about or what my opinion is based on that story. And sometimes they'll say, well, you don't have a view. It's not that I don't have a view, it's that you may not understand what I'm saying. That's why I've changed the way that you guys hear me. And in case you were wondering what the TKPS HD sign is on the bottom of the screen, that indicates that the show is available in HD for those of you who may not be aware of that. There are some people who were complaining that they couldn't get it in HD due to circumstances involving YouTube and the television service that they have as far as PS3 is concerned. You know, it's showing them in the format that they can't stand. Like, for instance, there's bottom of the screens on the top left hand and the bottom corner. When my first episodes came out, they were coming out as the black bars on the screen, so you wouldn't be able to see my hands, for instance, but you would only be able to see, like, maybe just my face in the $5 footlong regular, you know, anywhere where my face is, most likely, was the only thing you were able to see at that time. But you know, that has changed because it turns out it was a format that I knew nothing about, and then I did an investigation and learned that all I had to do was just click on it. You know, but now I'm starting to question what the deal is and why it happened. And you know, sometimes things, you know, take place for different reasons. Now, I've heard about stories that have had to do with people getting on the wrong buses or miscommunications, forcing kids to get on the wrong bus. And before I show you this video, I want to tell you about a cousin of mine who kept getting threatened into suspension over the fact that the bus driver was getting her there too late. You know, some teachers, when they have a job to do that requires them to ask why they're late, you know, sometimes they take offense and they blame the student for what happened, when in reality it's not their fault. You know, sometimes they are not used to the fact that the kid, for instance, has another class that they have to go to at a different school, and so it's causing a lot of confusion between one class and another. And sometimes they misunderstand what's going on. You know, they don't get the information that they need until after the fact. And that's bound to happen. And my cousin's mother was very upset about this too. And I'm not going to mention the names, but what happened surprised me. But I'm at least glad now that they finally resolved this issue. And it turns out the driver apparently didn't know that they were supposed to bring her to the school before picking up the little kids in the first place, because that's exactly what was going on at that time. So usually if there's an error in the service where the kid is told to get on this bus when they're supposed to be on another, it's usually caused by miscommunication. But the parents have a right to know, and so for them to tell the bus driver to do this when in reality they don't need to, that's unacceptable. Now that I got this out of the way, I want to show you the story that I saw on CBS4Denver.com also. This one's about a 5-year-old who was dropped off almost a mile away from where his stop was supposed to be. Now, had it not been for the bystanders and Good Samaritans for helping the boy get home, the parents never would have had their child home safe. Take a look at this.
It was just 3 degrees when the young boy got off the bus. He was walking in the snow, at one point even taking his shoe off because it filled up with snow. All he wanted to do was get home, and because of 2 strangers, he was able to.
I was in the wrong bus.
When school let out at Altura Elementary, 5-year-old Noriel got on the wrong bus. It dropped him off about a mile from his house.
I just started to walk home.
When Noriel's dad didn't see him get off the bus, he called his wife at work.
I didn't know what to think. I was, scared.
Meanwhile, Noriel made his way to Colfax. He was alone and walking in temperatures just above zero. Luckily, a man and woman spotted him.
This man came down and grabbed me because I was freezing.
The Good Samaritans took Noriel home, reuniting him with his family.
I think they saved my son's life. And if they wouldn't have found him, how would we have found him out there?
In a written statement, the Aurora Public School District says student safety is a top priority in Aurora Public Schools, and we take this situation very seriously. We apologize to our student and his family, and we are thankful that our student is safe. But this mom says her son should have never been allowed off that bus.
Something needs to be done. There can't be errors in the system like this.
The district's bus drivers are not mandated to keep kindergartners on the bus, even if parents are not at the drop-off spot. But the superintendent says an investigation has been opened to make sure this never happens again. As for Noriel's parents, they want to find those Good Samaritans. And all the commotion when Noriel got home, they were unable to get their names. They want to thank them in person.
And I'd like to thank Michelle Grego for that reporting on that story. Now, that's going to be it for this episode of The Kevin Piland Show. I'm Kevin Piland, host of The Kevin Piland Show, and I want to thank you so much for watching and listening to my show on SlayerC.listenToMyRadio.com. And if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and search The Kevin Piland Show on Facebook, click like, and start writing, and tell me what you think. And if you have any suggestions, please let me know by telephone number at 325-338-3925. Please note, I do not allow rude comments under any circumstances, which is part of the reason why I removed the comment section on YouTube in the first place. In case you haven't heard about this, I was getting rude comments for an episode that took place back in October, if not early November. It was a story about Alfonso Hernandez, the owner, and how his music is in Spanish rather than English. You know, I explained to them what happened, and they told me that it's not their fault, and if anyone has a problem with it, then you don't have to feature us. You know, they said it was okay, and they apologized if they were being threatened in any way, and so they just wanted me to make sure that I don't share them again due to that incident. However, they do say that they don't mind being a guest on my show in the future. But again, I'll look into figuring out what I can do to make sure this does not happen again. But in the meantime, thank y'all for watching.